There's a lot of crappy takes already about Harry and Meghan's visit to Australia, but this one bothers me in particular, and it should bother you too. This is from Reuters. Prince Harry and Meghan arrive in Australia to a muted welcome. What's the definition of muted welcome in Australia? Because the picture of Harry and Meghan with a crowd behind them looking up to 2, 3 stories of people crowded around the windows in the halls of this children's hospital to greet them, it's not giving muted. Oh, but don't worry, if you scroll through the photos, you're going to clearly see why. You see. Or maybe, even the Telegraph had a more truthful tweet about this. So the proof that they were given a muted welcome is that once the couple landed, they were whisked off the tarmac in a car, which we don't have a picture of, most likely because this was not an official government or royal visit. You're not going to have dignitaries and government officials lined up on the tarmac with a photo television crew there ready to capture that first moment. But also, unlike regular people, you are not going to have news outlets interviewing several of the people who were on the plane with Harry and Meghan talking about what it was like to see them queue up for the toilets. Here's why this matters. Reuters is a wire service, which means they distribute information, videos, photos for anyone who pays for their service to go ahead and use. For example, here is the Reuters article in NBC News. The byline is attributed to Reuters. Wire services are important. It's a way to get the need-to-know information when either you don't have the bandwidth, the newsroom, boots on the ground reporters to capture these photos, this information, etc. The problem is these wire services start editorializing in a way that doesn't ring true to what we actually see and what's further down in the piece. This article will be pushed out on Yahoo News. I've also seen it on MSN News. So there are people who will receive news reports about this from their Yahoo News app and read about muted welcomes or something. And it matters. This kind of clickbaity headline is disappointing to see from Reuters. Do better.
All right. Welcome back, Squadies, and everyone tuned in. Now, let's go deeper than headlines, deeper than captions, and deeper than the noise that keeps getting recycled across social media timelines and mainstream coverage. Because something interesting is happening again around the public appearances of Prince Harry and Meghan, Duchess of Sussex, during their visit to Australia. On one hand, you've got footage circulating everywhere. Hospital visits, public engagements, warm interactions, and visible reactions from people on the ground. You've got moments that look organic, unforced, and very human. People greeting them, people engaging, people documenting the moment in real time. And on the other hand, you open certain headlines and the tone suddenly shifts into something completely different. Words like muted welcome, words like low-key reception, framing that suggests distance, indifference, or lack of energy. And that's where the disconnect begins. Because when viewers actually watch the footage, especially from places like community engagements and visits, including Royal Children's Hospital Melbourne, the visual reality does not always match the emotional framing being described in some reports. You don't see silence, you don't see emptiness, you don't see absence, you see engagement, you see reactions. You see people reacting in real time. So the question naturally rises, how can the same moment produce 2 completely different narratives? And this is where media framing comes into play. When outlets such as Reuters publish descriptions, those descriptions are often shaped by editorial structure. What angle is being emphasized? What comparison is being made? And what tone is being used to position the story within a wider global context. But here's the issue. Once that framing enters the media ecosystem, it doesn't stay still. It spreads, it gets repeated, it gets shortened into headlines, and it gets amplified across platforms that don't always show the full context. So suddenly, a complex moment becomes a simplified label. And that label can stick. even if the footage suggests something more dynamic. Now, let's bring in the bigger picture. Since stepping away from official royal duties, the public work of these two figures has shifted into a different category entirely. They are no longer operating as representatives of the UK government or performing traditional state royal tours. Instead, their engagements are tied to charitable, humanitarian and advocacy-driven initiatives. That includes global work connected to the Invictus Games Foundation, which focuses heavily on veterans, recovery, resilience and community rebuilding through sport. And that distinction matters more than people think. Because depending on how you define the role, you interpret the same visit differently. If you see it as a royal tour, you expect protocol, state symbolism and diplomatic structure. If you see it as humanitarian engagement, you focus more on impact, interaction and cause-driven presence. And when those two lenses collide, confusion is inevitable. That's why one group looks at the same footage and says, "Look at the turnout, look at the response, this is engagement." While another group says, "This doesn't fit traditional expectations, something feels overstated." And both sides think they're reacting to the same reality, when in fact they're reacting to different interpretations of it. Now, here's where it gets even more important in today's media environment. We are no longer in a world where everyone watches full broadcasts. Most people see clips, headlines, and short summaries. A 30-minute visit becomes a 10-second clip. A crowd becomes a cropped frame. A reaction becomes a caption. And once that happens, context starts disappearing. So when someone says it looked muted and another person says it looked packed, both could technically be reacting to different edited versions of the same event. That's not necessarily conspiracy, that's just modern media consumption. But it does mean one thing very clearly. You cannot rely on a single headline anymore. You have to look at multiple angles, compare footage, check sources, and, well, understand framing. Because the story is not just what happened, it's how it was shown. And that brings us back to the core point of this entire discussion. The audience is not passive anymore. People are watching closely. People are comparing clips. People are questioning narratives in real time. And whether you support the coverage or critique it, one thing is undeniable. The gap between what is seen and what is said is becoming wider, and people are noticing. So, Squadies, the real conversation isn't just about one visit or one headline. It's about how modern stories are built and who gets to define the tone of what the world believes they saw. And Squadies, before we wrap up, make sure you subscribe, give me a like and share to our fellow Squadies.